Senator Alma Francis Heyliger, you want to recognize for your 7 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to my colleagues. Good afternoon to the people of the territory. Good afternoon to the testifiers. I would also like to extend a blessed day for African Liberation Day. We had an opportunity today here at the legislature to attend programming where we took the time out to really celebrate the liberation of Africa and remembering all the things that my ancestors had to overcome, and to know just years ago to today that to see where we have moved forward in society, it's definitely a blessing. But I want to put my first set of questions. I want to ask Commissioner Kazi Gomez. You spoke a little bit earlier about, looking, you're short-staffed. What do you guys do specifically when it comes to the hurricane season to recruit volunteers?
We work with Red Cross directly for volunteers, and so a lot of our volunteers in the past have come directly for shelter operations, really is through the American Red Cross. Since COVID, we've had some apprehension with volunteers and a little bit of fear community, getting a little bit of backlash.
Okay, go
so
ahead.
as far as so as far as recruitment of volunteers to work in shelters, they can contact Ms. Henry or myself if they're interested in volunteering in the shelter. We'll make sure that they're trained. We just have to have reliability, meaning that if an event is a storm and we need to open shelters, then we need to ensure that the coverage is there. So between Red Cross and our Community Achievement Services, our ESF6 partners, that's usually how we staff up the shelter.
Well, you keep referencing COVID, and last year COVID was at its peak. We're starting to balance out a little bit now. Now, what did you do in regards to having to deal with hurricane preparedness and COVID simultaneously, and what did you learn that you might do different this year?
Well, we were very blessed last season, Senator, that we did not have to open up shelters last year. So very, very blessed in that, and I'm hoping for that same blessing this year. So having said that, the differences will be your shelter capacities are decreased, your cleaning and operations increase, your shelter volunteers also increase, and then you also have pre-screening as well. So this is where I like to encourage everybody to get vaccinated. That's for your safety as well as everybody else's, especially if they're coming to a shelter.
Okay, thank you. Next set of questions is for the police department. As you know, because dealing with the hurricane season is a time of emergency, can you share with me and with the public a little bit, how do you guys deal with deploying the police department?
Good afternoon, Senator Heyliger. Thank you very much for the question. Truly appreciate it. If I understand your question correctly, you're asking how we would strategically place our officers during the time of a hurricane?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what we try to do is we try to get as many officers as we can to the respective zones, whether they be Richard Colwood Command, Zone A, here on St. Thomas, and here on St. Thomas it would be Richard Colwood Command Zone A, or Special Operations Bureau, which is down in the western part of the island, or we would try to get them to school security, which is Zone C Command, and we would have them conduct inspections, and then we would tell them to shelter in place until the strength of the storm passes the territory or passes the island, and then we would immediately go back out to conduct assessments of the roadways, conduct assessments of our infrastructure, and report back to other individuals in the EOC so we can get our assets, whether it be manpower, whether it be things of that nature.
Okay, thank you. I want to find out, well, I know during a hurricane, officers have to do a lot of overtime. How do you deal with them dealing with the mental stress and fatigue? What type of shifts and situations do you set up to make sure that these officers are well? Because a lot of them, they're already dealing with the hurricane themselves. Some might lose their homes and having to deal with that, but still have to come out and protect and serve. How do you handle that?
Okay. Again, very good question. Thank you for that. One of the things that we do as a department is we try to ensure our mental well-being of all of our officers, whether it be through peer counseling, whether it be through reaching out to our staff psychologists, or whether it be asking the officers themselves to go to the employee assistance program, which is done through Cigna. And we try to do a more enveloped and integrated response, because holistically we do understand when people need help, they call the police. But when police need help, who do they call? We have to call other police officers who have gone through what we have gone through. And more importantly, especially in this platform, you have 3 of the deputy chiefs that prior to becoming deputy chiefs, we were those boots on the ground dealing with Alma and Maria. And I would also like to ask Deputy Chief Newton from St. John if she could weigh in on this as well. Deputy Chief Newton?
Okay.
One minute.
Hi.
Please hold us in at this time.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, Deputy Chief Newton, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Senator. As it pertains to St. John, we have likewise, like St. Thomas, we have the same situation in place. Our officers are required to be in St. John several hours prior to the impact of the storm, because we also have to deal with the closure of the ports. So we have to be there maybe between 6 or 12 hours prior to the closure of the ports. And we stay hunkered down until the ports open back and we can transition our personnel to additional personnel. In addition, we have our mental health person that is on board. Hopefully it's not that disastrous that we are unable to get in contact with her. We can do a group debrief, or individually they can call one by one or go to Cigna, as Deputy Chief Velasquez.
Thank you so much for that. I want to direct my next set of questions to Director Joshin. In your testimony in February, you had spoken about the 911 operators in regards to them. I think they were part of the collective bargaining, and you stated Videma had required labor management to have a meeting with them. Has those meetings taken place as yet?
Good afternoon, Senator. There is no requirement, we've set up as far as reaching out to them. I'm going to ask my Assistant Director, Barbara Peterson, to talk about the details. But to answer your question short, yes, we did have a very successful first meeting with the collective bargaining.
Good afternoon, Senator Francis Heyliger. We did have our meeting with the labor union and staff at 911. And we had a very good meeting. We have some due-outs that we have to address. Primarily, they are owed a raise of 3% that we not identified funding for paying that. And
I can't.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Not really. You're choppy, so I'm not hearing the responses too well.
There's a feedback on my end as well, so okay. I'm not sure. So I apologize, but we did meet with them. Like I said, it was a good meeting, and it did include the union stewards for the 911 operators, and we had, as I said, 3 due-outs that we had to address. One was their raise for last fiscal year of 3%, and an issue relative to them receiving pay for meals when they work overtime.
Okay.
And one last thing. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Those things are they're going to be addressed, or you just discussed them?
No. We are going to discuss them. They were brought to our attention, and we now internally are working on the resolution to those matters. And then the final one was they are internally going to vote on deciding if they're going to move to 12-hour shifts. And once they've decided that, then we will work around whatever they vote on.
Okay, thank you.
Time.
May I ask?
Go ahead.
The other question I want to ask is in regards to the CAD RMS project. I know you guys had shared with us about that project, and I know it's important because during an emergency, dealing with 911 is very important. At that, could you give me a little update on that project, because you guys had said you had just rolled it out. And I also would like to know, 3 months later, what are your process for attempting to add texting to 911? Because this is something that I know during a hurricane, when the cell phones are not working, a lot of times people can still send out text. And in a state of an emergency, this is a major option for people. And I would really like to hear when this is going to be implemented.
Yeah, this is Director Josh, and I'm going to turn this over to Deputy Director of Operations Bruce Kelly, who is responsible for 911. But just my comment is, you're exactly right. We have learned a lot of things in the first couple of months. We did have a group come in from New Orleans and help us out on St. Croix, being part of a COVID-19 concern we had, and they came and educated us also on sort of advanced use of that particular system we have. It's one of those systems that, we're just starting to understand the capabilities of that. But some of those answers I'll ask the Director Kelly to talk about for a minute.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, yes, sir. Senator, thanks for the question. As far as it relates to the CAD RMS system, it is going rather well. We're actually doing a review currently to see what are some areas of improvement within the 911 and or other agencies. As it relates to the testing capability, we have not yet embarked on that one, but we would like to see that implemented in the near future.
Okay, so it's something you're actively working on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. My last question quickly. The last time you guys were here, we were discussing about bilingual operators. What is the status of that? Have you guys cleared that up in any which way, shape, or form? In Spanish-speaking operators, in case of an emergency, when people call in, there's options available for multiple speaking people to get help during an emergency.
Yeah, this is a lot of work has been done on this since the last time we met. I'm Assistant Director Peterson to really talk about it's one of those good stories I believe we'd like to share with everybody. So thank you, Assistant Director Peterson. Go ahead.
Yeah, we do have good news, Senator Francis Heyliger. We now use a service that many 911 centers throughout the United States use. It's called Language Line, and it's not limited to just Spanish. It has over 100 languages that can be used. How it works is both by FEMA, ECC have the code. If someone comes online that we cannot understand, we're able to get a template by pushing a code.
Excuse me, Assistant Director Peterson. I don't know why, but your mic is it's coming and going.
We're missing a lot of
Yeah,
info.
we're missing a lot. It sounds the information is very, very good, but we're missing a lot of it.
Hey, Senator Payne, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you perfect. We can hear Mr. Kelly perfect.
There's a control room that's flashing on my end that says that and there's an open mic. So I don't know if that's conflicting when I speak. I heard it when the general was speaking and commissioner as well.
Okay. Yeah. Just like how you were speaking just now, everything came through perfect.
Oh,
Try that again now.
Great. Is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. As I was saying, we are using a service called Language Line that both our ECCs on St. Croix and St. Thomas are presently using. We have this service that 911 centers throughout the United States use. It is not limited to just Spanish. We have over 100 languages that are accessible to us. How it works is that the operator, dispatcher receives a call. It's starting again, isn't it?
No, it's still good. It's still fine.
Okay, great. And they were able to punch in a code and get an operator within seconds on the phone to do a translation. It has been working very well. The operators are very pleased with it. But as it relates to your question, Senator Francis Heyliger, in terms of recruiting bilingual persons, we continue to recruit. We actually are in a process of onboarding 8 individuals. And just to give you some data, we advertise for 911 operators through personnel. They are tested, they pass a test, and then they're interviewed finally by TEMA. We don't meet these individuals until they pass testing. And we've in that last round of testing, we had 2 individuals who were bilingual. And when we offered the positions, they weren't accepted. So it's a numbers game.
Well, I am very, very happy to hear that this system has been brought online, because I was very concerned about the safety and the protection of people that needed help during a time of emergency that might not speak English. So I'm very happy to hear that you guys updated the system and you are actively recruiting individuals that are also bilingual. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for the indulgence.
You're very welcome, Senator Francis Heyliger. Thank you very much.
Senator Alma Francis Heyliger. Senator Francis Heyliger, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to extend afternoon to the people of the territory as well as the testifiers once again. This round of questioning, I want to speak to the National Guard. I want to ask in regards to, on page 5 of the testimony that was given earlier, you spoke to risk to operations. The risk during this period is being late to meet the needs of the territory. Our isolated geographical location, made up of 4 non-continuous islands, as well as reduced housing capacity due to COVID-19 environment, creates challenges that must be overcome. Can you please share with me what the plans of the National Guard is in regards to mitigate these concerns and make us, the legislature, and or the people of the territory feel a little bit more safe?
Yes, thanks for that question, Senator John Schumacher, Virginia National Guard. Also, we've already mitigated that risk. The biggest thing that we don't control is, let's say the pandemic continues to spread once again and you have a surge in the United States. So if a surge you're seeing in Michigan right now were to continue and that particular force becomes unavailable, or some other state becomes available, those are the personnel that will come and respond to our hurricane requirements. So if the pandemic spreads throughout the United States and nationally, the forces that would respond, meaning airflow, maritime flow, as well as personnel, are unavailable because they're responding to a requirement within their state, that becomes a risk. Currently, there is no risk to that requirement. We've already mitigated that. We still have EMAC agreements with our partner states, from Michigan to Tennessee to Alabama, to Florida, New Jersey, and there's about 14 different states that actually will support our requirements. The unique thing when I say the non-continuous location is everything that comes here has to come from air or sea. You can't drive here, so you have to make the decision early and 7 days out and 5 days out, and that means personnel and equipment flown in 3 days prior to being locked down until the winds are below the 30-knot wind to bring more personnel and equipment in. Over.
Well, the other question I wanted to ask you, on page 5 and 6, you spoke to reaching out to FEMA as it relates, and others, and relates to medical assistance and logistical capabilities. Is this something that, because we are always having hurricanes or we're in a hurricane zone, is this something that could be done prior to, or you just upkeep it on an annual basis in preparing for it?
Yeah, that's a standing requirement, Senator. If you look at the one chart, you will see territory active duty begins on number 1, and you'll see a requirement there where you'll see around the number 3 level where folks have to come in, bring in personnel and equipment to help support the requirements. It's already coordinated, and Department of Health with HHS coordinates to identify who those personnel will be that be evacuated out in those same aircrafts that bring military and medical personnel and the support. So this is a standard requirement that we have coordinated very closely with VITEMA, all of the ESF partners. We support all 15 of them, and we're pretty confident that when the time comes, they have the person identified. We will help move them to the airports, and we'll move them out as soon as those aircrafts are in the territory, bringing in supplies and personnel, and then heading back out to the United States to take our patients to secure them in facilities that can provide the necessary care and keep them safe.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear that. I am one that believes in preparation, not reacting after the fact. Okay, I want to direct some questions to VITEMA. Earlier we had conversation in regards to reaching out to the public, as you know, this is hurricane season in a couple of days, and I know National Hurricane Preparedness Week was, I believe, May the 9th through the 15th, and I assume you were doing a lot of rounds that time. What I'm trying to find out is, when it comes to the hurricane tracking maps, I know in the testimony and what was shared, I think it was 7,000 you've already distributed, etc., but our population is over 106,000. I also, on the website, I believe you have like a picture of it, a JPEG. Is there some way that it could be converted into a product that's downloadable, so in case you can't physically give out to the territory, because so far, according to what you're saying, you've already done about 7,000, is it a document that could be downloaded from the website that anybody else that might not physically get one could get a copy of it from your website?
All right, thank you, Senator Heyliger. This is Director Joshin from VITEMA. Yeah, when we say we gave them, we put them to locations where individuals will come and shop, or hotels. You know, that's part of the outreach we go out with. Ms. Regina Brown's outreach group is to make sure we can get those. The intent is not to have 100,000 of them go out.
No.
The intent is those individuals who are going to use them and are going to need them have access to those. Ms. Brown, I believe we can download those off our website. Is that, do you know, Ms. Brown, it's whether or not that particular map we downloaded?
Good afternoon, Regina Brown, Deputy Director of Planning and Preparedness. Currently, it is a picture, sir, but if it's downloadable to the format that she's referring to, I have to verify that.
Okay.
But
Yeah, because I saw the picture, but I wanted to make sure that if someone can't pick it up at one of these locations, they could still come to your website and download it so they could have a copy of it. That's what I'm trying to find out.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We'll work on that, and that should not be a hard fix to do, and we'll put that on our website. Thank you for the opportunity to explain that.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask another question. I know earlier we were talking about the 911 operators, and once again, I would like to say I'm very happy that you guys are utilizing the service to be able to help individuals through the 911 operators dealing with various language barriers. But what I want to ask you this directly. Now, locally here, 911 responders are basically listed as administrative individuals. And in my research throughout the US, they're listed as first responders. Have we reached a point where VITEMA is amenable to first 911 operators being considered first responders? Because if you think about it, these are literally the first people an emergency comes into. They're the people that have to deal with sometimes the panicked individual. Sometimes they have to explain to them how to do CPR and a slew of other things. And there are also a lot of times the individual that are the first responders to what we call the first responders. So I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts about potentially 911 operators being listed as first responders?
I'd like to answer that. Good afternoon, Senator Francis Heyliger.
Good afternoon.
I agree 100%. That's one of my major lifts that I want to accomplish during my tenure. I agree with you that I learned after coming to VITEMA that they were considered administrative staff. I have to disagree. One part is that we're not the only 911, the Virgin Islands is not the only location that suffers from this issue. There are other 911 facilities throughout the United States that have the same issue, but it would require legislation. It would require you and your team at the legislature getting involved. So that's something we probably should work together, making sure that it happens in the future.
Good. I didn't say all states did this, but in some of my research, we did pick up that some of the states did it. And I am happy to hear that you're in agreement with it, because my office and my team have already submitted the legislation. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on it. Appreciate you.
And then the last part, I would like to answer your question that you asked earlier relative to the text to 911.
Yes.
We will have that done by the last quarter of the year. And I also want to boast on our rapid SOS. I'll let Deputy Director Kelly speak about that. That is another platform that we have at 911.
Good afternoon, Senator. Deputy Director Kelly Vaitima. Yes, Vaitima has enacted what's called a rapid SOS system. It's a cell phone based system where any 911 call or any call that comes to 911 from a cell phone, it is automatically picked up and it's geolocated or pinpointed on the map. So that we can, and it's pinpointed on the map and can also track as that cell phone is moving. So in the event of emergency, the operators can utilize that system to see where the call is coming from, even prank calls.
What is this?
That's some of the ways it can be.
Well, thank you in regards to the SOS system. But is this a separate system outside of the one required that via the FCC, where every single cell phone company, if a 911 center requests that it be tied into 911, the cell phone company must make that service available? You would have to request it. Is that something separate from that? Because this has been going on, I think the FCC ruling came down since 2014, and across the US about over 1,000 call centers have already adapted to this. That's what I'm trying to find out. Are we going to tie into that as well, or this SOS system you're talking about is totally separate?
This SOS system, it's kind of like a offshoot to that, and we are in the process of tying in fully with text portion of it. So this right is just the geographic location system, and the next up is the text portion of it, so that you can actually text into 911.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the indulgence.
Okay, you're most welcome, Senator Heyliger.